add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often, if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
This is
Hiring on all cylinders.
Hello again, recruiting pals. Rob Stevenson here once more for Hiring on All Cylinders at the ERE Recruiting Conference in beautiful San Diego, California. And I am joined now by William Maurer, who is the Global Sourcing Manager at GM. William, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
So can you explain a little bit about your role? It sounds pretty highfalutin, and I'm just kind of like licking my lips thinking of oh, this is the perfect person I want to have on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that. So I'm the Global Talent Sourcing Manager for General Motors. There's a few different facets to that, I would say. The first of which is that I do lead a dedicated team of sourcers who are responsible for bringing in passive talent, essentially, for our harder to fill or niche positions. So I have a team that reports directly to me there. I also work very, very closely with our employment branding team and formulating strategies on essentially how do we increase the exposure, understanding of GM, and overall increase applicant or candidate traffic. So a lot of different facets there.
I'm curious, what are some of those niche roles?
Yeah, so for us, and if you look at the future of General Motors, and there's been a pretty significant change, I would say, in from what you would consider to be a traditional manufacturing company to a technology company.
Yes.
Yeah, when we look at just how much technology there are in vehicles today.
Yep.
And then more importantly, how much technology there will be going forward as we look at things like autonomous vehicles, cars that drive themselves, that navigate themselves, and everything else. So for us, in a lot of cases, we're talking about a lot of STEM roles, a lot of engineering and technology roles, and some rather specific, skill sets. So it's a big push for our organization, as it is for a lot of companies right now. And we all know that that's a very competitive landscape. So
definitely,
we are doing everything we can to make sure that we're at the forefront of that.
Sure. So with that shift from a more industrial manufacturing company to a technology company, did that require a sort of reskilling of the talent team in terms of because they're reaching out to completely different talent? Absolutely.
And if you look at our recent insourcing activity, if I had to summarize it, I would say one of the reasons that we made that decision was that strategically we decided that we needed to control the narrative, right? That we had to have people that were GM employees telling that story and telling their GM story.
Right.
And when we look at your traditional recruiting or your traditional sourcing skill set, I think there's been quite a shift there too. In fact, they were just referencing it in the presentation that I just walked out of. But if you look at what we were looking for in terms of people's ability to really be influencers, be talent ambassadors, and take those types of roles within the organization, then all of a sudden things like critical thinking and problem solving and presentation skills and negotiation skills and things of that nature became much more valuable, as opposed to just the ability to put together a Boolean search string or something of that nature. So I think as our industry evolves and the labor market evolves, we've definitely seen an evolution in what the current talent acquisition professional looks like.
Yes, I love that evolution and I guess realization that recruitment and talent is often the first impression that a candidate will get of your organization. In case of General Motors, everyone knows GM, but in terms of an employer, what's it like to work there, that's the front line. So I love the phrase talent ambassador. You are representing this company, and you need to put your best foot forward as you commune with these people.
Yep, no doubt about it.
So GM recently brought all of its talent functions in-house.
Correct.
Which is going to be part of your session later this week.
Yep.
So first of all, what does that mean? Does that mean just cutting all your agency recruiters? What was that whole process like?
Yeah, so prior to this, we were, and you have to go back a little bit to understand where we came from. So we obviously went through a rather public bankruptcy back when the economy was in tough shape. And during that time, we scaled back significantly on our talent acquisition team. A company our size was down to 4 people in the talent acquisition space.
Wow.
Simply because we were not doing any hiring at all during that time. Well, as things started to turn and we started to grow again, the decision was made at that time, and based on the circumstances that were there, that we would go to an RPO model. So we would have a third-party vendor that would actually represent us and bring all the talent in-house for us. And as I mentioned earlier, essentially as we looked at how the landscape was changing and how competitive it was, we really felt like we needed to control the narrative and that we needed to, for lack of a better word, improve our game if we were going to get the type of talent that we needed.
Gotcha.
And so that started, of course, with a new leadership team. It went through a rather lengthy process in evaluating and bringing in a complete talent acquisition team. And everything was really built from the ground up. I mean, when I came in, it was a blank slate. There were no rules of engagement. There was no blueprint. There was no ideas. There was really, how do you build this in order to achieve the goals that we were looking for? And so thankfully our leadership team has been very cohesive and collaborative, and we've obviously spent a lot of time together just making sure that we're working towards the same goals, which is really, as I mentioned, getting the right people that can represent General Motors the way that we feel is appropriate.
Okay, so it sounds like what drove the decision to shift away from the RPO model was the idea that you wanted the talent team to be more ingrained with the company so that they can tell that story better and better represent your values and messaging.
Absolutely. Yep. I'd say that hits the nail on the head, and really just take back control of the processes as well, just ensuring that we're creating the best possible candidate experience, which we all know is very, very important in today's market, and that we're able to have a more hands-on approach to tweaking and changing and improving our processes so that we're delivering the best results for the company.
Definitely. So you mentioned that the first step there was new leadership team and then new talent team, right?
Yep, you got it.
So what did the talent, you said you were down to 4 talent people at one point, which is baffling considering the scale of GM, but I guess when the economy was in shambles, it makes sense.
Yep.
But so it was tiny, and then what did the talent team look after that? Once you had brought everyone in-house, what was the makeup?
Yep. So globally, we're over 250 people now on that team, and if you look at it, we have recruiting teams that are broken down into verticals that support different areas of the business. Of course, my team, the talent sourcing team, and we have coordinators and people that focus on the employment branding piece, people that focus on training and education. There really is a multifaceted approach here. We have specialists in a number of areas, whether it be legal and compliance, again, training, branding, sourcing, recruiting. We have specialists in all those areas, and we've really tried hard to find people that had not only the right background but the right mindset.
Sure, yeah.
And certainly the right passion for what we were going to do, because there's no doubt that although it's really exciting to build something from the ground up, right? You spend a lot of time operating in the gray, if you will. There's a lot of times when things are not crystal clear, and you hit a lot of bumps in the road on the way. So,
of course, yeah.
So we definitely, as we've gone through this, it's been a continuous learning cycle for us, and we needed to have people too that could deal with that kind of ambiguity and the different bumps in the road. So
right, a specific kind of person who has the grit to work through there not being as many rigid processes and kind of figure out as they go along.
Yep, and that's not always easy for everyone.
Of course, yeah.
But we've actually, I felt like, done a really good job of it. So
cool. When you joined, you mentioned that it was kind of like a blank slate.
Yeah. So
you get in, you're global sourcing manager at GM. They've just made this huge shift in terms of what the makeup of the talent team is going to be. what was your plan of attack? What did you first start with in terms of, because it sounds like it was probably up to you to figure out a lot of these processes.
Yeah, and certainly I think like anyone, you rely a little bit on your own personal experiences and what you know. But it was really important that I understood, first of all, just by coordinating and collaborating and talking with my fellow leaders and leaders throughout the organization, what our overall goals were and what they were looking for there. And then we had to really I had to figure out a problem statement. So what are the things, a lot of companies will face similar challenges, right, when we're talking about the competition for talent. General Motors has its own unique challenges because of some of the things in our legacy and our history and just some of the things that are specific to us. I'll give you an example. Detroit, Michigan, right? So that can be a big hurdle for us. I think when most people think of Detroit, the first thought that pops into their mind is maybe not the most pleasant one, right? So there's certain challenges that are unique to us, and so really understanding those helped formulate the the type of people that we were going to need and how we wanted to set up the team.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So in like figuring out what the challenges were in terms of I guess like ultimate candidate objections sounds like, that sort of shapes A, the kind of person you're going to go after, and B, the approach.
Yep. And we had a lot of feedback. We did a lot of research, surveying, talking to people within the organization, people that had recently come into the organization, and people who had gone through the process, so to speak, or had some sort of conversation with us about what it was about joining General Motors, and just collected as much information as we could about what people's, I guess, first impressions were of our company and some of the things that really came up in terms of objections or things that would be roadblocks for us. And so that helped us formulate, exactly how we wanted to set this up and go after it.
Was there anything surprising in that process in terms of like problems you didn't anticipate running into?
I wouldn't say anything was a total surprise. I think that if I had to break it down into three major categories for us, it was industry and misconceptions about our industry.
Okay.
Like we talked about being this typical smokestack, grimy manufacturing industry and not the technological company that we are today.
Right.
Certainly legacy was something for us as well. So our bankruptcy was very, very public, right? And would actually affect people's perception of us, and understanding kind of the new culture at GM was important. And then location, as I mentioned, was a really big one too, in Detroit, where the bulk of our operations are. So those were three of the major hurdles that we came across and really re-emphasized, for me anyways, the fact that we needed people that were truly gifted at the talent ambassador piece.
Right.
And that was going to be very, very important to what we were doing.
So with the example of Detroit, like you mentioned, huge presence you have there, and you would get on the phone with candidates and like, this job requires relocation to Detroit, and they'd say something like, I don't want to go to Detroit. It's a bleak apocalyptic hellscape. So like, what do you say to that? Like, how do you was it about, okay, but also like we're a technology company. We have we're not exactly what you think, and Detroit's not that bad. Like, what was the move there?
Yeah, I think it differs for person. I can tell from my personal point of view. I could tell my story. So I relocated to Detroit for this job at General Motors, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. Prior to moving there, if you would have asked me 2 years ahead of time, you're going to get a job offer in Detroit. Are you going to go? I would have said there is no way, there is no chance, that is never going to happen. But quite frankly, a lot of that was driven just by me not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? So, but moving there, being part of the community, seeing the resurgence, seeing some of the amazing things that are going on downtown and how it's growing and how it's revitalized, and just the amount of change that's happened there, the companies that are moving in there, I was kind of blown away, to be perfectly honest, like really, really pleasantly surprised. And it became an easier conversation for me to have because I could draw upon my own experiences. And I think that for a lot of the people in our organization that have either moved there or grown up in that area, they can tell their own story too.
Yes.
Because they've seen the change. They've seen the revitalization. They've seen some of the exciting things that are going on, and they can speak to those things. And again, that's a really important piece of it, and why we felt it was so important to bring the talent acquisition piece in-house.
Yes. I'm seeing this theme here. And it's really interesting because when you, in this case where you're able to draw your own experience and your talent team as well, being people who you've deliberately selected because of their ability to be a talent ambassador, they're not selling hot new opportunities, right? They're selling, hey, this is my experience. I'm here, and if I didn't like it, then I wouldn't be trying to convince you to come here, too, right? Because if they can't answer why I'm here, then you don't have an employer brand, and they shouldn't be working there, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. This has been really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing your talk later. I could keep bugging you, but I'll let you carry on living your life
Okay,
and
I
enjoying the
appreciate
conference.
that.
But yeah, William Moore, Global Sourcing Manager over at GM. Awesome talking with you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.